Hello everyone, today we're going to go over the blind 75 in C++, and today we're working with longest consecutive sequence. Now, before we get started, feel free to pause the video in order to actually fill out the comments necessary to be able to solve this problem. For when starting this problem, we are usually going to be asking ourselves 4 different questions. We first need to ask ourselves what the input's going to be, what data structure / algorithm / technique we need to use, what to do with the data, and then finally what our output's going to be. So now, breaking down the problem, given an unsorted array of integers nums, return the length of the longest consecutive element sequence. You must write an algorithm that runs O(n) time. Okay, so to be able to give a breakdown over exactly what we need to do for the following, the first thing that comes to mind is that, well, for one, our given input is that we are given a list of nums, especially when looking at the example, and the expected output is to return the length of the longest consecutive element sequence. So if we were investigating this, the longest consecutive elements inside of the whole thing, depending on how it's jumbled up at the same time, so we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the longest consecutive, so therefore it will be 4. And then since we have all these numbers already jumbled up together, but we still have an output of 9, we have the following longest consecutive sequence being 9, since it starts from 0 and goes all the way up to 8 accordingly. And the technique that we will be using for this actually is that we will be hashing. Now, hashing is a way where we are able to actually keep track of the length of a given sequence accordingly, where we are able to break up our given data and keep track of each part accordingly. So what we will do, namely, is that we will insert all numbers into a hash set for fast lookup, and then iterate through each number and check if it is the first number of a sequence, then count the longest sequence it can form. Alright. Now, for us to be able to go over the steps on how to replicate this type of hashing behavior, is that the first step we need to do is that, one, we need to create a hash set and add all numbers to it. Then we need to initialize a variable to track the max length of a sequence. Then we will loop through each number in the array, since we were dealing with arrays, and then we're going to check if it is the first number of a sequence. Num -1 doesn't exist in the hash set, and then if it is, then count the length of the sequence it can form and update the max length if necessary. Finally, we return the max length. Alright, so now just to give an update over how step by step we're going to create this is that I'm going to put this up here for sake of cleaning. Is that step 1? We create a hash set, so it's going to be an unordered set of integers that we have, where our set is going to have the nums array from the start all the way to the end. And then we're going to do step 2, where we initialize the max length 0. Then we do step 3, where we are going to be looping through our nums array. So in this case, it's going to be for each loop. So it's going to be a num of nums Then check for the first number sequence, A, over here. If it's not in the set, count. If it's not in the set, num -1, then we start checking. So we are going to have our current length set to 1. It is the first number of a sequence, and then while num +1 exists in the hash set, while set.count num +1 exists in the hash set, we're going to increment our num count, and then we're going to update the current length as well. And then we will be updating our max length if necessary. So max length is equal to max of the max length, current length. And finally, we will return right here. Just double check on this. Okay. There we go. That's more like it. And then we have return max length. That'll be step 4. Let's just double check to be sure everything is already correct. Let's run this. Alright, pass all the test cases and submit. Okay, so just give a rundown and breakdown of our following space and time complexity for the following is that the time complexity is O of n, where n is referring to the number of elements in the input array. The space complexity is O of n, which is used to store the elements in the set. So yes, this was longest consecutive sequence. Thanks again for taking time to watch this. If you found this helpful, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put in the comment section. And as always, take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.